Not your life.
For some reason, do you see the for some reason it's blurry. Do you know if there's anything with these 22?
You can't, it could be one of them.
Yeah, at least we have that. Yeah, okay. All right, folks, it is 6:01. And welcome. We have a forum of members here. So I call the July 10th, right? July 10th JCS committee meeting to order. And welcome. For those who have the agenda, we're getting some additional agendas. If you don't have one printed, you can also go onto the website and access the agenda that way as well, if you'd like to follow along. We're going to move to item 2 on the agenda, consideration of minutes for the June 5th, 2023 meeting. Second. Any discussion? Okay, no discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? That passed. And that also closes item number 2 on the agenda. Opening item number 3 on the agenda, which is chair comments on the meeting and agenda organization by supervisors, staffers, and that would be me. Again, I would like to welcome everyone here. It's fantastic that we have a full room. I just love that. And we have several people on Zoom. Also, thank you for that. There are just 2 comments. Am I getting echo now? No, it's. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Just a couple comments. The first is we will have an opportunity for the public to speak and comment anything on the jurisdiction within JPS, but also note that since we have 2 highly debatable items coming up, I think it's going to be way too confusing to have conversation during item number 4 and then have subsequent conversation during the consideration discussion of the ad hoc task force presentations. So during that time, I will allow comments from the gallery and Zoom when we get into those specific areas. Just note that it's not going to be a free-for-all though, because we have a lot of people here. So with that, you're going to have to be called upon, and if it's a question of the ad hoc task force, either I or someone else on the committee will restate that question, just so you know how we have the process going forward. Other than that, just on the 2 task force presentation today as well. Note that this is not the only time that we're going to be discussing that. Today are the reports. If we're at a point where we will be able to bring forward a resolution for consideration, that would be most likely next month. But we'll see how things go. All right. I've also spoken with Chair Egan, and he plans on having a special orders meeting in September just for these 2 topics. So we'll have a special orders meeting, and then after the special orders meeting, we would consider this at board, assuming that we have a resolution to consider at that point. Okay, so tons of opportunity to speak. This is not your only time. And just so everyone knows the process going forward for those 2 items specifically. Okay, I think that's enough for me. So we're going to close item 3 on the agenda and open item 4, which is public comment within the jurisdiction of this committee. Are there any comments? We'll start here in the room and then we'll go to Zoom. Okay, no comments here. Okay, anyone on Zoom would like to speak? Okay, with that, we're going to close item 4. And open item number 5, which is communications shared by committee members. Anyone have anything they'd like to say? Supervisor Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my opinion, no change is warranted to the present committee structure. Task force has, in my opinion, failed to articulate a need or reason for change.
Thank you very much for your comments. Supervisor Jeffrey.
Yes, a couple of things. This upcoming Thursday, July 13th, the Wisconsin Counties Association Judicial and Public Safety Steering Committee will be meeting at the Glacier Canyon Lodge in the Wisconsin Dells at 10 o'clock. Supervisor Powers, who I believe is here, she's also on that committee. She will be there. There's a couple of this meeting is going to be a pretty important one because we're going to be voting on some conference resolutions that's going to be taking place in the annual conference. One of them is requesting the state of Wisconsin to review and revise compensation rates for the state public defenders. And then we've got a couple of resolutions from a couple of counties, Polk County and Lancaster County, requesting the state of Wisconsin to review and revise the entry-level compensation rate for assistant district attorneys. We also have a couple of a resolution from Outagamie County that's supporting pending legislation that broadens the definition of sexual contact for the purpose of crimes against children and sexual assault. And we have a couple of resolutions that are urging the state to use the budget surplus to fund rural fire and ambulance emergency services. And lastly, a resolution from Eau Claire County directing the county clerk to place a referendum question contained in this resolution regarding the legalization of cannabis on the November 8th, 2023 ballot. Says here, that's a typo. So so all of these resolutions we'll be voting on, and we'll determine on whether it's going to be on the annual conference docket in September. So that's the other thing too, is that I've been engaging in a couple of meetings with Judge Mike Gibbs, also Heather Faust from Behavioral Health, and Officer Zapata from the Oshkosh Police Department. And I believe Renee Scirocco was present at one of the meetings in regards to, and also the public defender for Winnebago County, to discuss the possibility of creating a position that focuses solely on those with mental health conditions that are within the criminal justice. Something that we're still looking at this particular position, what this position would entail. We're kind of liking it to something similar to a drug court coordinator, similar to Jennifer Delfoss, somebody who offers the continuum of care for those that have mental health conditions that are within the criminal justice system. And we're looking at including that into the budget for next year. So we're still working on this. It's something that we're kind of looking at what this position would entail, how much it would be, and who would kind of take the reins on that, whether it be a DHS or district attorney service. But I think we're kind of leaning towards DHS. So that's just something for us to keep in mind for when we vote on the budget in October. So lastly, I'll be in Austin, Texas this month for the Justice and Public Safety Committee Steering Committee for National Association of Counties, and at their annual conference in Austin, Texas. Hopefully I won't melt there and I'll come back in one piece. That's all.
Sounds good. Any other comments? I just have just actually one. I was fortunate to attend the fraud school that was put on by the sheriff's office. And if you haven't gone through it, I would highly recommend it. It was fantastic. I learned a lot. I thought I knew everything. But I did, there were some things I absolutely went through, and the whole home lock thing, the title home fraud is fascinating. So I would highly recommend that if you have an opportunity to attend the fraud school, to do so. It is a fantastic thing that we do in this county. With that, I don't have anything else. And so we're going to close item number 5. And we're going to open item number 6, which is a discussion of the public health presentation on substance use harm reduction vending machine grant by Director Doug Gibney. Welcome.
Thank you. We are here just to share information with you today about a grant that the health department, in cooperation with the Human Services Department and District Attorney's Office, applied for public health vending machines related to harm reduction. With me today is Madeline Brager. Andy is going to give you a presentation. You have a copy of that presentation in front of you. You also have hot off the press a overdose fatality review annual report. There are additional copies of the presentation and the annual report here in the room. As soon as I'm done speaking, if anybody wants one, just raise your hand. I'll be happy to provide that. So Madeline is here behind me, and then also representatives from Human Services that have been working with us on this work. So Amy Gepper, Heather Boston, and of course, Bill Topol, lead of the department. The Board of Health has already reviewed this budget transfer and grant application. The grant is for a little over $80,000. We had asked for significantly more, but there was so much interest statewide in accessing these funds that the state reduced the awards so they could fund more projects in more places. We are working with Human Services to actually apply for a second grant to increase the impact of the vending machines to place an additional one. And Maddie will give you a little bit of detail on that and just answer any questions that you have. This will proceed to Personnel and Finance next month, and then County Board. But we really wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions we had. Well, and I want to mention that Maddie was really responsible for great work in writing the grant and coordinating this work. So I'm just going to recognize her for that.
And Maddie, what is your last name?
Brager.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug, for introducing me. So again, my name is Maddie Brager. I'm a community health strategist here at the Winnebago County Health Department. So I'm going to be talking to you today about our public health vending sponsoring opportunity, which Doug mentioned. This is an opportunity with Human Services, Public Health, with the support of the DA's office. Especially Eric Spar was really important and pivotal in supporting us and applying to this grant today. So what is harm reduction? So harm reduction is a set of practical strategies and ideas aimed at reducing negative consequences associated with. So how does a vending machine have to deal with this? So this is just another tool and strategy we can use to provide these harm reduction practices. So what is a public health vending machine? A public health vending machine increases access to public health and wellness supplies, increases hours of operation outside of traditional service hours, and expands locations for people to access harm reduction tools. So why is this important? So many Wisconsinites don't seek assistance or services for their drug use due to fear of being recognized, shamed, judged, or even arrested. So these vending machines would expand access of life-saving tools for all people within Winnebago County and expand 24/7 access to all parts of the county. What supplies would be included in this vending machine? So this would include Narcan kits, fentanyl test strip kits, the Terra drug deactivation bag, which is going here with the picture on the right screen. That's just another tool for substance use prevention. It can dispose of unused pills and prescriptions and substances. You add a little water in the bag with the substance, and you can throw it away safely in your trash can. You'd also include education materials, treatment and recovery resources. You'd even be able to put the treatment and recovery guide right in the vending machine itself. The We Heart You app business cards, contact information for the 24/7 crisis contact in the solutions peer response team. And lastly, the harm reduction program coordinator's business card. So where would the locations of these vending machines be located? So again, this is a partnership between Human Services and Public Health with the support of the District Attorney's Office. So the first location would be at the David Albrecht Administration Building, the Outdoors Courtyard, formerly known as CAB, or the County Administration Building. Familiar with the courtyard, there's a bench out there, and kind of each up to the back potentially would be the first location outdoors. The second location would be outside at the Needy Human Services. So this would be potentially on the corner on the side with the employee entrance. Located in the photo. And then, as Doug alluded to a little bit, there's a new opportunity that Human Service just submitted for a grant application that would include another indoor vending machine inside the lobby of Orange King. This vending machine, if Human Services is awarded, would be run the same as the two currently being proposed today. So that would include using the same software and the same vending machine company. And then lastly, how is the vending machine going to be assessed or monitored? So this would be part of the harm reduction program here at the health department. And it's important to know that this is our anticipated process, but there's still a lot of planning to do if this is an event. And with this, the vending machine company would be contracted to help with inventory processes and for temperature management. Since Narcan is temperature sensitive, and these vending machines would be outdoors, that is crucial that we would be able to have those real-time alerts to ensure the safety of the machine. So what does this process look like? So if somebody's going to want to access the vending machine, they're going to have a visit with our harm reduction program coordinator at the health department from Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 p.m. An in-person visit is going to be preferred, but we will accept a phone call as backup. Outside of those office hours, our clients would be able to contact the Winnebago County Crisis Center to have those 24/7 component. So after that, the harm reduction program coordinator and the crisis center will conduct an intake to determine the needs and resources for that client. That client then would be provided with a unique PIN that would allow them to access those supplies that was determined during that intake for those needs and resources. Having that unique PIN will allow us to limit the number of supplies and time between touch points between the harm reduction program coordinator and the crisis center. And then we'd be able to work with the vending machine company to configure this to our needs and wants. And again, this is all an anticipated process of what we think could potentially happen. And that's all I had. Is there any questions I can help answer today?
I have one about kind of the intake process. So what's the average anticipated turnaround on that? How long would it take if somebody says, hey, I think I'm in a situation where I may need Narcan versus actually physically having Narcan? What's the turnaround?
I think that's a good question. I think, so if they're coming into the office, they're able to help, the harm reduction program coordinator would be able to help that person pretty easily at that time. Same thing with the crisis.
Yeah, the machines are connected to the internet. So issuing, a PIN for access to supplies, we would hope, although we don't have, the vendor established yet, or the machines yet, we would hope that that would be a pretty instantaneous process since they're essentially connected to the internet. Machines are also climate controlled, so that we can make sure that they're operational year round.
Supervisor. Since the machines are outside and you mentioned that they are climate controlled, are there other places that have them outside? I mean, because I want to make sure that in the courtyard, it handles -20 or it handles 93 degrees as well. I'm sure that's the case. Just want to make sure.
Yes, and that's definitely something in consideration with looking at different vendors, looking with a company that can both heat and cool a vending machine to our needs. And that would allow us to also be able to put an awning or any other type of weatherproofing materials with that machine.
I apologize that I misunderstood because I attended via Zoom your Board of Health meeting. I thought the machines were already selected. That is not the case. We are looking for a machine. This is just a grant.
So this is just the budget transfer for the grant. And once we, have that budget transfer completed or there's approval, then we would begin to seek bids from vendors. so we're aware of vendors and we're doing some research now. It's just, we're waiting for the process.
And then the other thing that I didn't pick up on, who services the machine? And I suppose being connected to the internet, you're getting information back to whoever to say these items are needed. Is that correct?
Yeah, at this point, both the machines are located, in county buildings, public health offices are there. Initially, we would maintain those machines and the supplies. We would get inventory reports, from the machines as needed, and, we'll adjust as we learn.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this presentation. I really appreciate it. I just have two rather quick questions. And they're more like conceptual questions. The first is, do we have learning from other counties that are doing this? I mean, we talked about how Wisconsinites are struggling with this. We have any learning that we can look to say, yeah, this is, we've seen this benefit from, Milwaukee or Dane or whatever.
Yep, so there's Marathon County is an example. That one has a pre-existing vending machine that they're currently operating. And there is a few other counties as well that have done some of these processes and shared at some of the community practices that I have attended. Some of their learning specifically from which vendors can regulate the temperature changes from Wisconsin and some of those other processes. So during this time, that is something that we want to reach out to some of those other people that, what did you learn from this process and how we can do better?
So that will be part of the process then to reach out to others who have already done this.
Yeah, so in terms of the vending machine, so, we'll be learning together, learning from others, but in terms of the machine itself and the availability of Narcan, it's well established that the more available we can make it, more resources we can get in the community, the more overdoses we'll hopefully be able to avoid. I shouldn't say overdoses, fatalities, minimize fatalities as much as we can.
So in Marathon, as an example, have they seen a reduction attributed to these vending machines?
It's, it would be difficult to assess the impact of just a vending machine without knowing, who actually took the materials and whether or not they actually needed to use the materials to, respond to an overdose. The health department's already the largest distributor of Narcan in the county, and this would just supplement the hours that are available. We're really relying on, on the research and data that really tells us that we can prevent overdose deaths by making Narcan and fentanyl test strips so that, people know if they've got fentanyl in what they have and decide not to use or use differently.
Great, thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on to that point. I know that, it's not in Wisconsin County, but early in 2021, there was a Hamilton County, Ohio that started to use these. And they, while a national overdose deaths went up 15% that year, Hamilton County saw a decrease by 10%. Yeah, so there has been statistics that show that these do work. It's so one of those things where they, if they do a test and they realize that that their drugs do contain fentanyl in it, they will either throw them away or they will basically use a lot less stronger, a lot less of a dose. So yeah, I will say that.
One other question really quick. Is there any concern, kind of came to me when Supervisor Jeffrey mentioned this. Is there any concern about increasing the supply of Narcan, encouraging use and encouraging overdose of fentanyl?
And that's a great question. I think there's, largely myths that people, if they have that available, will, be more reckless or try to overdose. And we really don't see that that's the case. Nobody really wants to overdose. And, having to use Narcan is going to create a miserable situation for that person.
Want to make sure no other questions?
Just one follow-up.
Yes.
Maybe getting more machines. I'm guessing that the reason the machines are outside is because it's 24-hour access. Has there been any consideration to put it in the lobby of the administration building? or where the Pepsi machine is at the Nina office? Is that so that they're inside? Is that? I'm sure it's, the reason it's outside is just because of access for after hours. Is that correct?
That is correct, right? If, you know, if we can identify a good indoor location, we might be able to save some funds and not have to have controlled machines. At this point, those haven't been suitable locations as of yet, but we'll continue to research those options.
Yes, Mr. Flo.
I think that the parent deactivation bags are a great idea. If we focus on that, I know that we have. Way of from big bag day, but I don't think we focus enough on disposal, safe disposal, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes item number 6 on the agenda. Moving on to item number 7, which is consideration vote approval of acceptance of a mobile board unit being donated by the Fox Valley HERC with a value of $31,560. Emergency Management Director Eric Matthews. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me tonight. Cyril Bramer, corner, medical examiner is here as well. If they have questions for her, it's kind of the both of our lanes. During COVID-19, Cyril's office saw an increase in deaths that required autopsy. And there was a backlog in autopsy at the state at laboratories. So we ended up borrowing a mobile morgue unit from Taylor County for almost 10 months. Park County, sorry. In that process, we identified that not only in Winnebago County, but in our region, we are short on mass fatality house for deceased. The morgue that Cheryl's office is currently building will be for day-to-day usage. This mobile morgue unit that we're accepting or propose that we accept is just another tool for one of those mass casualty incidents, something large scale being donated by the HERC that will be housed and owned by our office, but will be available as regional assets.
I move to consider a resolution for approval. Let me read it. Sorry. Authorize the Winnebago County Emergency Management Department to accept the donation of a mobile morgue unit from Fox Valley Healthcare Emergency Readiness Coalition. We have a second discussion. Supervisor Eisen.
Yes. Eric, could you explain to us who the Fox Valley Healthcare Emergency Readiness Coalition is and who funds it?
Healthcare Emergency Readiness Coalition is a part of DHS at the state. So it's a function. They have a large number of different entities from health department. Doug sits on that committee, as well as out of Gamey County. My office sits on that committee. The healthcare systems, hospital systems in the region also sit on that committee. It's just emergency preparedness and activities for healthcare systems.
The statewide regional
Correct.
organization funded by the emergency management
Through DHS.
Department of
Supervisor Flo.
So 2 questions. The first one is, I guess, we're building more. Do you feel that this, and I guess I can ask Cheryl as well, no, just like her, that this would kind of help augment the capabilities that we're looking for? And also, is this new or is this used, and what's the anticipated lifespan of it?
Try to answer both those questions. I think that this is an additional tool. So this mobile unit is not designed for day-to-day or long-term usage. This would be, we have one of those instances we don't want to talk about. Right? Something happens at one of our special events or anywhere in the community where we have a large number of these. Day-to-day, the more unit that we're constructing is the right tool for that. This would be the tool when we need overflow capacity.
In a mass casualty event, then what's the current operating procedure? What do we currently do? In terms of, we have multiple disease. We don't have this more now, so what would this save us? In terms, is it gonna save us money? Is it gonna save us from contracting? Or is this just gaining capability?
You want to jump on that one?
Gentlemen, overall, it will save money. Until the morgue is built, or even if it was, and we were over capacity in this mass casualty, then I would be looking to turn to another entity to help with that storage, or depending upon what type of situation it is. So I would look to probably access the facility that we use now, where we are charged per decedent per day.
Supervisor Isaac.
Thank you. What is the capacity of this mobile unit?
It is 12. Well, it is 12. It is,
3 units of 4.
Yeah.
So we can size it as we need to.
Yes.
So
and it's pretty much like a canvas type cover that comes down and secures for the cooling capability. It's not necessarily, wouldn't be able to be used in something that was a criminal aspect or something of that nature, because that decedent wouldn't be in our care, custody, and control.
How long do you anticipate this would last? What would you do?
I think it depends on usage. Hopefully, like expected, to be around 10 years based on material, but that would depend on usage.
Yes, 1 second, Supervisor. Did you, either of you have questions before we go back to? Okay, no. Supervisor Isaac.
Yeah, wouldn't we just be the caretakers of this for the region? Much as the SWAT unit, we're the main base for that operation. So we would kind of be the base for the operation of more than one unit that would, of course, be available for others of the counties in our
I wouldn't want to say that we're going to take this on as an ownership, like Cheryl's office or my office is going to be the people in charge of this. We're going to own an asset that, as requested by other counties, would be available.
All right, I just have a few questions, and they're questions I always ask of these kinds of things, so they're not hard. The first is, are there any strings associated with taking this donation?
The only thing that will be involved with this is it does have a generator and a cooling unit that will require monthly maintenance and testing. Our facilities department has agreed to take on that as part of their generator cycle.
That was actually my next question, was the upkeep and maintaining it.
Yep.
So that's it for maintenance?
Yep.
Other than, I assume this is a mobile trailer, right? So you'll have to also worry about the axle and.
It's actually palletized units
Oh, it is.
on wheels. So when we did our research and Cheryl reached out to her counterparts throughout the state, that was kind of the guidance that we got, was storage wise, that was easier. Transportation is probably as easy as a trailer unit.
Okay. And do we currently still have the Clark County? Well, we don't, that's gone.
No, I had to give that.
We had to give that back. So this is something we could use immediately in the interim. And Do we know timing on the building of the morgue? Have we received an update?
The last I had heard, I believe there were some changes that were happening with the evidence garage portion. They were working out some logistics with the parking lot or something.
Oh,
So
I
we'll
see.
see then.
Okay. But perhaps we'll invite Director Eller to come in with each unit to just idea on what we're looking at. Okay. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Okay. With that, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes. Thank you. That closes item number 7 on the agenda. Now we're opening item number 8. Consideration vote approval of county's contract with the Connexus. For a term of 3 years, Emergency Management Director, Eric Rasmussen.
Thank you. Captain Mendola from the Sheriff's Office and I worked on this system together. Connexus or Alert Sense is the software program that we as a county utilize for mobile alerting or emergency alerting. It's also a system that we use with some of our response teams in the county for their internal call-outs. This system is also utilized as the platform for our iPaws, which is our integrated public alert warning system. Those are like the Amber Alert type systems where we can reverse 911 and all cell phones. So this is a contract very similar to the one that we've had for the last 5 years. Our current contract expires December 31st of this year. When we went to look at these contracts, there were some limitations that we were running up against in our previous contract. And Nexus has gone well beyond what I ever anticipate us using in the system. And our cost per year actually goes down about $1,000 from where we have been the last 5 years.
With that, I move to consider resolution authorize the 3-year renewal of the Connexus Alert Sense alerting software contract. Second. Discussion. Supervisor Hanson.
I spoke with Captain Mendoza and with Director Rasmussen this morning. They answered my question. I will be endorsing.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. That closes item number 8 on the agenda. We are now opening item number 9. Consideration vote approve the transfer of $21,258 from the contingency fund to the sheriff's office and purchase of an evidence trailer and the necessary equipment with seized asset forfeiture funds. Sheriff John Metz.
So this particular trailer will be funded with seized assets forfeitures that were taken between 2016 and 2018. They were inadvertently placed into the general fund. That was our fault. We didn't pull it out and carry it over. But the trailer would be used for incidents that are multiple day complex investigations. We have the ability, we have a system that is mobile that we can inventory evidence right on scene. And it has a barcode system, so it allows us to keep everything logged and keep custody of the evidence. Some of the investigations could be hundreds of pieces of evidence, and it's very difficult to keep all of that separated and keep everything straight for the court process. And this will allow us to do that. This does come, or it would be including the necessary items in the trailer so that we could actually use the inventory system on scene.
With that, I move to consideration vote approve the transfer of $21,258 258 from the contingency fund to the sheriff's office and purchase of an evidence trailer and necessary equipment with seized asset forfeiture funds. Second, discussion. Supervisor Deputy.
What's the lifespan, estimated lifespan for this?
You've had a dive rescue trailer that was purchased over 10 years ago and is still in great shape. It's one thing about having towed pieces of equipment versus things with engines. There's much less maintenance and they'll last a lot longer. I see this in 25 years. Piece of equipment. That is, yeah.
Supervisor Eisen.
I can't seem to find the resolution.
Yeah,
There isn't one. Because this is under the amount, it will just go to you and it will go to P and F. It does not need to go to the board, so there's not a resolution. You're welcome.
okay, with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes. Okay, that closes item number 9, opening item number 10, consideration vote resolution, Winnebago County Sheriff's Office Communication Center to be designated the public safety answering point for Winnebago County.
So we require a grant that we are applying for requires that there's a resolution that will accept the monies if we are awarded them. I will have Captain Mendola explain the details of that particular grant. And then as promised, she will update you on FirstNet and all of those other items.
One up.
Welcome.
Hey. He pretty much said that one sentence, so this is only required by the state. The state decided to use some specific funding for NG 911 features in the state. Those of you that weren't on the board in 20 and 21, we got the initial grant that upgraded all of our computer on-site premise equipment for 911 call handling. We knew at that time, though, when the actual connection were to happen, that we would have some labor that has to happen. So this grant covers that labor that we would be applying for, which it'll be in the 24 budget because it's not, it opens December 1st. So it's gonna go into 24 budget, so there won't be anything with the funding, or the application is due August 1st. And this resolution is a requirement within administrative code for it to happen. So we sort of fast tracked it. We got you here. We're gonna go straight to the county board at the next meeting, assuming it's approved here, so that we can apply for the grant. The grant that we're actually applying for isn't, it won't be a ton of money. It's something like $25,000, that labor piece. But it's a companion grant that the GIS department will also be applying for, which was also announced since this grant was announced too. They're both announced back to back in June. The GIS grant's gonna be much larger, and that I'm sort of segueing here to the update. But the GIS piece is the part that we still really need to work on. It's kind of a global piece that needs to happen. So our GIS department has done everything that they can possibly do on their own. And our GIS data is co-housed with Outagamie County and Calumet County in a 3-county system in Outagamie County. That has worked for us very well for decades. However, that system is very antiquated and will not work in the NG 911 environment. And we knew that going into that. So they've been meeting for monthly, they've had monthly meetings for upwards of 5 years, trying to get to that point. All 3 of those counties put in their GIS budgets this year, funding for a contractor that went out for bid in Outagamie County earlier this year. We had analyzed those bids collectively as a group. We selected a vendor, and it's actually right at the, like in the purchasing department of Outagamie County right now to pick that vendor. So that first part of the grant, or the first part of that piece will happen this year yet. And then we're hopeful that if the GIS department gets the second piece of this grant, they can fund phase 2 and phase 3 of that RFP that I'm moving coordinated. It's kind of a big, there's moving parts in all sorts of directions right now with NG 911. But this is not really at all related to the resolution, but it sort of all goes hand in hand with the update that asked for. So
And before Corporation Council, let's make this formal. So I move to approve consideration of the resolution. Winnebago County Sheriff's Office Communication Center to be designated the public safety answering point for Winnebago County. So move, we have a second? Yeah. All right, discussion. Before we do that, Corporation Council.
Given the fact that there is an August 1st deadline in order to submit this, Supervisor Fari had agreed to be the one to basically submit this resolution, because given the fact that this committee is meeting after the deadline to submit items for county board consideration, Supervisor Fari was kind enough to actually submit this. So even though it says respectfully submitted by Judiciary and Public Safety, there was an amendment, and Supervisor Fari is the one who would be submitting.
Okay, so that's already been submitted to the
My
chair,
office.
to your office. And when we consider this next Tuesday, will we have the JPS vote on it? Then
Well, since
can we,
it
or
was-
is it something that we can just speak to?
I believe, since it's already been submitted by Supervisor Fari, that depending on your vote, you could certainly reference it, because again, we satisfied the rule because it came in before noon.
Right.
So the only question is, do you want to have Judiciary and Public Safety having it respectfully submitted, or do you just want the vote?
Well, as we've talked about, if we have a unanimous agreement, then I would want that to be as of the committee.
So it would be Supervisor Fari, since he was the one who met the deadline, and then you would be underneath it.
Right. Okay, discussion. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes.
did you have any other questions about 911 though? As long as I didn't segue at all and make sure that there were open forums. I know that was part of the sheriff's report.
I just want to, do you have any anticipated completion?
We have met with the Department of Military Affairs, the 3 counties, and the 911 folks at the state. And AT&T was the vendor selected by the state, and when we submitted all of our stuff, we had to put a deadline on there, and we picked Q4 of 24. So we're hopeful that we can get it all done by then. Crossing our fingers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes item number 10 on the agenda. Moving to item 11, Sheriff's Report.
Okay, as mentioned earlier, we continue to offer fraud school. We will be having a class in the town of Utica that is being set up. So individual townships will have some of those classes occur right at the town hall. We are also starting a sextortion class, and it's typically for teenagers. What happens is they are on the internet. They believe they're talking to let's just use a young male from city of Oshkosh talking to somebody who he believes to be a young female from Georgia. Turns out it's not, and they share some racy photos, and then they are extorted for money, or that person will paste them all over the internet, whether it's Facebook or whatever social media platform they're on. This has caused teen suicides. It is extremely sad. We have had kids come here and tell us what's happening. We take a very aggressive approach, and typically we bully the bully enough to where they stop. And there is a county ordinance that we can write in a citation for. We can also arrest them. It's really about getting the word out that if this happens, obviously you want to teach them and give them tools not to do this, because the person they're talking to is not who they believe they are or who they say they are. But it's also, if you do make that mistake, come to us, we'll help you.
Is there a federal law against doing this as well, or?
I'm not certain if there is. We're behind and I have asked Senator Johnson's office to look at sextortion and fraud, so it's easier to prosecute, because Fraud cases that we're looking at, if it's not over a certain amount, which is substantial, we had a $75,000 fraud federally that was out of the state of New York, but it didn't reach the threshold for federal prosecution. So we were asking for some change in federal law, so it gives us some more tools. So we'll be offering that as well. Today's count is 228. It's kind of held in that area, 220, 235. We had our jail inspection on June 27th. All is well. You'll get a report soon. We are investigating the Oshkosh Police Department officer involved shooting that occurred on June 29th. That would have been another example of where we would use the trailer to take to the scene to collect evidence, to keep all of those things in order. Currently have 8 vacancies in our jail division and deputies. We have 3 in background and we have 7 in our fall internship, but I have 4 known retirements at this point in December. So, you know, that's cyclic. People in, people out.
Supervisor Isaac.
Yes. I'm surprised I've never asked this before, but could you explain to us what safekeepers are in terms of those in our jail?
Sure. So there's an array of different types of inmates that are in there. If we're keeping somebody for, I'm trying to remember what safekeepers, remember? Exactly. What's that?
Transport, what do you do, like overnight?
Oh, yeah. So somebody's doing a transport. And they're transporting from, there are different companies that will transport 10 people at once in a van. And they'll go throughout the United States and they need a place to store them, to house them overnight while they rest or whatever it might be. And they'll come to this facility, they'll pay us for that night stay of, 5-6 people, and then they'll come and pick them up in the morning. Of the 28 of those are ES sanctions, so they're the sanctions that are put on by the board.
Any other comments, questions? I just have one. I really, like, as I mentioned, I really enjoyed the fraud school. One suggestion I would have is publishing those dates on the county website if possible. I stayed after class.
Right.
And I just asked, what can we do as a board even, or as a county to help people know about?
We publish them in the ADRC's newsletter, and we're publishing them at the libraries. But to your point, we'll make sure that they get out on the website as well. Social media, we use that obviously, and people register for the class. We have as few as 3 or 4, I think, and then as many as 27 or something like that. So, we'll do however many we need to do to keep people informed. It's really the only way to beat fraud is to be informed, educated, and safeguard your identity. That's it. Because it's prevalent, really prevalent.
Are you still planning to do the Citizens Academy next month?
Yep, absolutely. I believe we are full at this point.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Yes.
On the fraud school, I also had a chance to do the fraud school a little bit more than a month ago. Because of that, I took some countermeasures, was alerted this morning. One of my accounts did have fraud. I found out about it within hours because of what was told at that class. So it's all in dispute, but it's very worthwhile.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so that closes item number 11 on the agenda. Opening item 12, which is report, presentation, discussion, and draft resolution discussion. Ad hoc task force on the per diem structure. Why? And so this is how this is gonna flow. I'm gonna ask Supervisor Wise to say something. give us some thoughts on it. I will then open up this discussion to this committee. After we've had an opportunity to comment or discuss, I will then open it up to any additional comments from either in person or on Zoom. And again, when we have those discussions, you need to be called upon and acknowledged, and the question, one of us will redirect. So with that, we'll go to the
Thank you, Chair Stafford, for allowing me to address the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee tonight. Our objectives. On February 28th, 2023, Winnebago County Board of Supervisors considered resolution 191-022-023 to establish this ad hoc task force on per diem structure. This resolution passed, and the slate of task force members was selected by Chair Egan on March 23rd. From the beginning, it was our objective to make as many comparisons as possible to arrive at a consensus for our recommendation to this committee. The final report is being submitted today for your consideration. This task force had 8 meetings from April 3rd to June 23rd, where we discussed this issue with the assistance of the county clerk's office and the corporation council. Along with determining the current per diem payments to the county board of supervisors, it's in appendix E of the report. There were 2 reports that helped us reach our conclusion. First one was comparison of like counties. That was population over 100,000. That was prepared by the county clerk's office. Appendix C. The second report was the Winnebago County municipality compensation plans. This was prepared by the task force and the assistance of the county clerk. We felt this was necessary just to get a benchmark of where we were going on this. Although citizen members of our commissions and boards are very important to the Winnebago County, our charter did not request that this task force examine this compensation, so we admitted that. Special thanks to County Clerk Julie Barthels and Deputy Clerk Cassie Smith-Greger. Provided the 2 reports that were needed by us. First report is a complete listing of the Winnebago County supervisors and how much per diem was actually paid to each supervisor. Also provided was a listing of 15 counties with population greater than 100,000 and the methods and payments amount that were paid to the supervisors. It was agreed by this task force that it would be more effective to consider only these counties with a population over 100,000. There were places all over the board, and we just wanted to narrow it down. Our corporation counsel, Marianne Miller, and paralegal Story Penniman provided all the legal guidance necessary, which we need a lot of to complete this report. In researching supervisors' compensation, it was decided that this task force would also consider comparing all the 21 municipalities within Winnebago County. We were able to reach out to all but 2 of these counties. Key findings. Currently, the only method of compensating our supervisors is by a per diem policy. The supervisors currently have a budget of $125,000. Divide that by 36 supervisors, it comes out to $3,472.22 per year. That was just a starting point for us that we were looking at. Basically, there are 2 levels of per diem paid depending on the type of meeting attended. The first per diem method is for attendance at scheduled county board meetings, $75 per meeting. Second, for attending committee, commission boards, not the county board, $50 a meeting. Also, there's a payment for mileage to and from these meetings that is determined by IRS guidelines. Currently, I believe this is 0.655 cents per mile. Since this is an IRS issue, we did not include this in any of our comparisons or recommendations. For a more complete summary, see page 4 of our report. Recommendations, what it was all about. Attached to the report, we are also submitting 2 suggested documents to this committee for their consideration. First one being a resolution, and that I can go over basically what it is. It's a 2 to 3 page document. The county board supervisor will be paid $500 a month. The committee chair will be paid $75 per committee per month. The county chair will pay $1,400 per month, and the county vice chair of $700 per month. There's also a sample ordinance that covers some of the same things, and those same, four categories were also included in the ordinance too. Right, Lisa?
Great.
There's five of us here.
Wonderful. First, I just want to thank you for the great work. This is fantastic. A lot of work went into this. Very clear that a lot of analysis, a lot of hard work. And I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, questions, comments, Supervisor Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the final report of the Winnebago County, Wisconsin Ad Hoc Task Force on the per diem structure of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors incomplete. The final report has failed to provide citations to appendix schedules to support, document, and explain table findings. You got all this information, but how you gonna interpret it? A. Appendix B, page 6. Table 1 is confirmed Winnebago County budgets for supervisors. I checked them out, they're all correct, except there was 2 years where there was $1 difference. Table 2 is unlabeled and undocumented. What does it say? What do we learn? Let me just go through this and then you can have responsible.
Circle back. Please.
Appendix C, page 7. Comparison of like counties' compensation programs. The chart is undocumented, no citations. I don't understand the comparison of like counties' compensation programs. There are 15 counties referred to. 2 counties unanswered the base salary or per diem question. Please explain, 5 counties provide salary only. 2 counties provide per diem only. So there are 6 counties that provide a base salary and per diem. This is a total of 15. Please explain how salary with per diem works. I'll explain Fond du Lac County because I'm aware of that. Appendix C, page 8. Other county budgets, supervisor wages. What does the chart mean? How was the information verified? I'll reference Winnebago and Allegheny County. Winnebago County's budget, of course, was $125,000, the adopted budget for wages. Allegheny County's budget was at $468,352. Is their 2023 county board operation with 3 full-time employees and 37 part-time employees. This is not comparable between Winnebago and Allegheny County. But if we multiply 34 Allegheny supervisors at their salary of $57.80 plus $15,302 for the chair and $73.56 for the chair, you'll have $219,178 for the cost of supervisors. Next, there's no citation or documentation for appendix B, pages 1 to 10. I think that this task force should have another meeting and pulling the notes. Before asking the Judiciary Committee to put a stamp of approval on the recommendation.
So I'm going to give Supervisor Wise an opportunity to respond to these questions, but know that I'll let you decide which ones you're going to respond to.
All due respect, we were under the gun here trying to get this done and completed. We put an awful lot of effort on this. I think had this been a total committee, we were given 6 months to do it, and we could have done all these things. You can have some meetings. Hang on here. I feel very strongly about this, but I'm just saying. I don't think it's very. I'm not prepared. This is the first time I have seen this done.
I understand. That's why I said I'm going to give you the opportunity to respond, but.
That's my response.
Okay. Fair enough. Supervisor Hanson.
Well, I understand what Supervisor Eisen is saying, but when it comes to salaries on page 8, that's just the budget. It can go either over or under budget. Like, for example, on Outagamie at 468, they may only come in at 250 or something similar. Am I misunderstanding what I'm seeing here?
Yes.
This is really just budget, not actual expenses.
That's correct, yes. There was a page in there that does have the actual expenses for us. Compared to what the budget was every year.
Supervisor, anything else?
By the way, thank you very much. I actually give credence to your numbers. I don't question them. There's no reason to not give accurate numbers. I like the comparison. And I thank you and the entire committee for putting this together.
Supervisor.
Yeah, I just want to thank the very thorough, what I feel to be very thorough research by the ad hoc task force. And it, it answers a lot of questions, just like what other counties have done, what other towns have done. At this point, from all the information that's been provided here, I think this is it serves us all a pretty good idea of how we should shape the county board going forward. If I understand that some people may still have some struggles to wrap their head around this, but I don't. So I just want to thank the task force for putting all the work into it.
Supervisor Paul.
I'd agree with Supervisor Efforting. Jim and the members of this task force, you guys have done a fantastic job with this. It's very thorough. I very much appreciate this. You go line by line and lay it all out. So I think you guys are certainly onto something, and I appreciate what you've done, and thanks for coming here.
So I just have a couple items. First is I see where Supervisor Eisen's coming with a lot of this, but for me, it's a matter of presentation than it is actual context. And perhaps I looked at that and I kind of read into it, like, it makes sense to me as an individual. Perhaps there's opportunity as this discussion continues to the broader board that, there's more of a presentation to bring some of those pieces together, but I think it made sense to me. I didn't really have any specific questions on that. I guess the question I have straight away is there's a resolution, a draft resolution. And it's submitted by JPS. And so one of the questions I have for Corporation Council is, this was born out of a resolution that went to the board, right? So this did not start, this effort did not start at JPS. It actually was, I think it was Supervisor. Oh, it's Derek, yes. And we considered it, brought it to the board, and the board decided to put together this ad hoc, essentially, right? So the resolution itself, once this takes form, should that be this committee, or should that be Supervisor Sestero, or should that be the ad hoc?
No, I don't believe it should be the ad hoc. I believe it should be this committee because it's touching on ordinances, the general code, and it's touching on rules. And that lies within your jurisdiction. That does not take away from the fact that the county board basically tasked this task force with coming up with ideas. And so they did, and based on their ideas, there is a draft resolution that was submitted, that we prepared, my office.
Right.
So my opinion is that once there's enough vetting and questioning, that it would be appropriate for this to come from JPS.
Okay. You know, I have this philosophy, right? That if it's coming from the committee, really it's all committee. And if that is the case, then a committee member could sponsor that as well, correct? If I'm going to be consistent, I
Yes.
try to be.
Well, you have rules that you follow and
Yeah, and you know how I am. So, okay.
And it just as, I mean, because as Supervisor White indicated, myself, my staff were in some of these meetings. And I have no doubt that Supervisor Wise and the group can provide the backup documentation for all of these numbers. I mean, I don't think that's a problem because they didn't pull these numbers out of the air. So it would just add to the information.
Thank you. Before we talk specifically about the resolution, as yes,
If there's documentation, that documentation should be given to this committee with the report.
fair enough.
Otherwise, you're sending a blank check to the county board and you're taking responsibility.
And why today is just a discussion. So there's still opportunity to remedy that at the next meeting.
Right, and another chance for the task force to come up with the answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we talk about the resolution, I would like to open up to anyone who's here in the room with any comment. Would you please come to the podium?
Can you do questions and comments, or just, can we ask a question of?
Ask the question. Yeah, you can ask the question. Please come forward. I'm going to say, keep it at,
Yeah, I have two questions.
okay, perfect.
Less than a minute. Supervisor, Gabbard from District 12. So my question is to you. You did a fine job of doing the dirty work. Salary versus per diem. Have you looked into if we become, or the board, the next board becomes salaried? They are then also an employee of the company because they're salaried? And where does the WRC pension come in? That might be Mary Ann, but that is a question that's been in my head. Where does that go?
So I will say that in terms of whether you would be an employee or not, unfortunately, it is not a clear question because there are many interpretations. In terms of unemployment and workers' compensation, it is clear that supervisors are not employees. In terms of tax withholdings, I would say supervisors would fall into the definition of an employee. But again, there are a myriad of statutes in Wisconsin that touch on who is an employee and who is not. So quite frankly, there are areas where you could be considered an employee, and areas where you would not be considered an employee.
Would that be able to be found from the other counties that are doing this? Would they have a handle on it, or is that their interpretation also?
I reached out to my colleagues regarding the question of supervisors and do they fall into an employee status? And the responses I got were basically echoing my sentiment, which is it depends on the interpretation and where things are. I can certainly continue to reach out, but there is no clear answer.
So if this would go down as a resolution accepted by the county board, it's not clear. Right?
Yeah, well, again, it depends on the scenario.
Okay,
That is only one piece of it, okay? If you were to, let's say, walk out to your car and trip, there is no question in my mind that you would not be deemed an employee and be able to collect workers' comp because it did not arise out of it in the course of employment. You're getting a salary. Again, with your tax returns, it would suggest that you are an employee.
okay. I'm not concerned about any of the other, just where do we stand? What are we called? Because we're
But
still
even
elected.
now,
You can't go out and. Yeah. Then my next question is, can you get the rest of the documentation that we need for the, as per Mr. Eisen, if there's more documentation, will the county board have all that? This comes before the county?
well, I
We'll
would
try,
assume
yes.
that the committee,
We'll have
we
to
did
do
not
that.
put it together, but I'm sure.
Okay,
So just two things. First is, I've actually already asked Mary, I'm sorry, Corporation Counsel about the employee question. And one of the things I think we need to resolve, because there's some, even if you were to ask each of us on this committee, we would give different answers.
Right.
And we do need to have some, we'll say, alignment to what it is. Because if we all have our own interpretations and we're proving something, that's not going to be sustainable long-term.
Right.
Especially as you have new people in decision-making capabilities. So we do have to have some sort of point of view provided on what this county believes that should be.
I agree with you.
And so I've already spoken with Corporation Counsel as well as what's.
My colleague,
Yeah, well,
labor.
yes, Mike Collard, just can't think of his Director of Administration, to come together with a point of view. And I believe next meeting, we're gonna have some discussion on that, correct?
Correct. And Director Collard spent many years doing labor, as probably most of you know. And he shares my opinion, but I have no doubt that he has a lot more experience in the labor area than I do. But again, I would say for tax withholding purposes, even as we sit here today, I would consider all of you supervisors and employees.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, but I'm not the expert. So I want to get the process straight. Thank you for your interpretation. I always appreciate it. Your committee would not approve this until probably August or?
Correct.
Farther out?
At the very earliest August.
Okay. So it still can be tweaked.
It can be tweaked for sure. I mean, this is just a discussion today.
Okay.
Next would be the actual resolution that we would focus in on at the very earliest, right? That would be in August. You know, I don't know.
Presentation perhaps by someone.
Correct. Yeah, part of that will be a request to get some clarification. So I do think these are valid, my personal opinion. I think these are valid questions to be answered. But I think a lot of this could be answered rather quickly, honestly.
Okay.
But part of that discussion will be, I would want to make sure that, these are at least addressed at some level.
The goal here is to get this done soon.
Right, but
And in a timely fashion, but soon, because when these committees were formed, it was to allow this to happen before people.
right, but not at the expense
Right.
of making sure this is the right thing to do. So the one thing that I'm going to be really insistent upon is that we're doing due diligence on this.
Right.
So when we get to the board, we don't have a 2-hour conversation on what an employee is, as an example.
Right, that's
Right.
why I'm bringing it up now,
Yes.
so that we don't have it.
But also these questions as well, because I can guarantee you, I've been on the board now for a little over 2 years. I can guarantee you, I know the people enough, that this page, if we don't address them, at least talk about them, they will come back up at board.
Mhm.
And so I would rather have that discussion in this committee than at the board.
Correct, and that's why I want to make sure that it's going to come twice,
Yes, at least.
at least.
And again, think about, that's just this committee.
Mhm.
Then there's special orders.
Mhm.
And that's just going to be just on this as well as the committee structure.
Correct.
And then there's going to be another opportunity at board, whatever that final resolution is.
Right.
So there's going to be plenty of
Plenty of time
time,
and plenty of opportunities,
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
but in a timely fashion, so that we can move on.
Yeah,
Okay.
that balance, right?
Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Just to follow up to Supervisor Gabberts, I do not need an answer today, and you can tell me dumb question. Is there a conflict, or how do we, or is that what you're doing between Winnebago County rules, state statute, and what the IRS says? Because I'm more inclined to default to whatever the IRS is going to call it. Don't need an answer today, because I know that may be opening a can of worms.
I can tell you, my answer was based on Wisconsin statutes. Because again, many statutes in the Wisconsin area touch on employees. I did not based on the IRS.
Were there any other? Yes, Supervisor. Yes, please come up and then we'll get to you.
Okay, thank you. Betsy Ellen, District 7 Supervisor. I prepared the majority of this, so I'd like to answer some questions, but I don't know what this sheet says, so I have no idea what questions he was asking. So, but quickly, I want to address some of the different budgets. So for example, in Winnebago County alone, for example, we have some supervisors that take nothing, and then we have some supervisors that take quite a bit. So we were trying to bring all the numbers together to try to figure out how this works, right? Not an easy task. So some of the numbers we did receive, we had to go into their budgets, find it, and then and do that. That's how we came up with those numbers, the majority of them. Also, the municipalities, for example, can't tell you how many phone calls that I made, and Chairman Farr just gave me Vinland, town of Vinland. So like some of them don't have websites. So I'm calling the clerk's office, like all the rest of the supervisors that were on the committee also did. I can't document that. I could just tell you that we had to call them because they don't have a website. They're not telling us, so we have to call them personally. So I'm not sure how you would want me to document that. So this is me just calling the county clerk's office, like our county clerk, she was nice. She has how many hundreds probably of emails that she sent out to get these. So we can, is that what you're looking for? Are the 50 so emails that we've received from other counties? I'm not sure. So is that what you're looking for? So that we know how to work this?
I'm gonna ask Supervisor.
Documentation, you cite this information was obtained from personal calls to county, to municipal clerks. This information was taken from the Winnebago County budget for 2023, where it cited back what the 2021 actual amount was and 2020 actual amount was. Wherever you got the information, if you got the information from the county clerk, say this
Understand.
was provided by
Just
the
got the
county
sheet,
clerk.
so we're
It should
good.
be
I will
documented.
look at, I will absolutely.
You guys are all college graduates. Come on.
Wow, that's going. Lovely, thank you. So now that we've gotten this sheet of paper, I guess we can have another meeting and we'll try to get as much more as we can to you. Please, if you have any more questions, I'd love to ask any.
Here. I'll make myself available to give you
Be careful.
the inside information of what
Be careful, I went to
would
college
be
too.
expected. I think a sample of that is from the reference for Fond du Lac County. And I think for the five other counties that pay both salary and per diem, these need to be explained because they're all different and what we do makes it different. I would say Fond du Lac County is a reasonable model to go forward with. But, you're tasked with the work.
You want us to base our entire pay per diem on one county that you presented?
No, I want you to go
Oh,
back and
that's
tell
what
us
you
the
told
same
me.
thing
So-
as the other five counties.
That's exactly what you just told me. So I'm just making sure that that's not what you want.
That information was taken from the rules, the county board rules from Fond du Lac County, which each member of the,
Yes. I understand that, but you just said that you wanted us to base our pay structure on the Fond du
well,
Lac.
I would like you to explain, if you're gonna get a salary. Does it apply just because you're on a standing committee? Or does it apply because you're on, other committees?
Well, we did write that into the report, so
Well,
maybe
you
read that
didn't-
summary.
You didn't make any citations where that came.
But all the
from.
questions you
Came out
just
of the
asked me
sky.
were in the summary, so maybe reread the summary and you'll see why we presented a salary, because I'm pretty sure it was explained in that.
Well,
Any
to me-
other
to me,
questions?
the important comparison are the 6 counties that have both salary and per diem. How does it work for each of those counties if you want to compare it and give us something to go on? I have something here to go on from Fond du Lac County. They're going to pay you a salary because you are on a standing committee. And because you go to a county board meeting.
Yes,
They
I
will
wrote that
pay
in here,
you,
that's
they
just
will
for
pay
standing
you a per
committee.
diem.
Pretty sure. I wrote
Because
that.
you are on an ADRC and because you are on a Veterans Commission, and all these other committees and commissions and boards.
Yes, and the boards were not included. It was all standing committees like I wrote into the summary. And that is going to be reflected on what could happen in the committee restructuring also. So that is why we did it on the 12 standing committees. We guys use 12 or 13, so.
Okay, well, I think we have some clarity on some of the areas in which we could communicate and focus on as we go forward on that.
Oh, go back to Arabian and see how to document.
Okay, so, thank you very much. Supervisor,
Whoever I am.
I know you are.
Thank you.
Come on. Hey, you. Supervisor Kay Haran.
Kate Horan, District 5. I've just got a couple of quick questions. And it seems like when I was reading the information that was on the my county iPad, that there would be more money spent on the salaries for the supervisors than there is at this point. Maybe I misread it because as I was looking back over it just now, I couldn't find it. And with that being said, if that is in fact a fact, what is the impact of having a salary on the clerk's office with them not having to do all of the stuff that they do. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for example, it's 9 hours, a month that they spend preparing our documentation for per diem. So if you work that out, I think, did I do 3 years? I think I did 3 years, and we did 9 hours a month, what it would cost a year, and it was basically, I think I came up with, sorry, I don't have my numbers with me right at this moment, but it was almost 3 weeks of solid work in 3 years. So 3 weeks, for example, 3 work weeks. So 3 entire work weeks or more, I think it was closer to 4 weeks, was dedicated solely on doing the salary per diem for our board. So whatever that works out, yeah. So if you work 4 weeks and then you do the pay, and that's
I'm
just,
thinking that
and that's
my-
taking them away from other jobs to do that, so.
And I was thinking if my number one is that we would be getting paid more, but their job would be lessened, it would equalize out.
Right, and then they would be available to do other jobs that maybe perhaps they're being, because we're so understaffed at this point, so it would lead them to be able to complete other positions and stuff, so.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Anyone else? Supervisor? Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Supervisor, go ahead.
Ralph Harrison, Supervisor of District 31, part of the committee also. I guess I'm just gonna make some comments. Okay? It took a lot of work. We spent a lot of time going through lots of stuff, lots of discussions. And as being a board member, I'm finding out now that if you want to know more, you should come to some of the meetings to find out what's going on. Because the first day that I went, became a supervisor, they told us right out, we should rely on our committees and listen to our committees, because the committees go through questions, answers, they talk about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of ideas thrown around. We had a lot of ideas we thrown around here too. And the way I guess I look with this group when we talked about it is that we're not doing this for us. We got to forget the future. New things are happening. Okay, new stuff is good. We're doing this for our grandchildren or our kids. Okay, 2 years is not a time. We're going to the next one. So I think what we're doing here is we're trying to set up things for the future. We looked at a lot of this stuff. There's a disparity. It's really terrible. I don't care where you go. I was lucky enough to go to a convention where we went talked about other states, which are way different than ours. So there definitely, anyone could look at this report, could talk to any one of us, and there is a disparity. We're not getting paid enough. There's not enough for the future. So we have to look at that. We can look at these little petty things and say, this we didn't do, this to do. There's a lot of information. That committee worked real hard to do this, but we're doing it for our future and our grandchildren and our kids. And I think too, as a supervisor now, age 1, I've been here for a couple of years now. I'm not new anymore, but the thing I found out is that also what we talked about, for $50 or $75. This job is not a $50 and $75 job like it has been with the living. Okay, if you want to know stuff and you want to be on this board, you got to do more than that. And that's what I'm finding out myself. I go to other meetings. I don't take credit for it. Some other supervisors that are not here around took meetings and went to meetings and meetings. But I'm going to learn to know more. And I think if we look at the future and talk about a salary, we'll have more people run against people that have been in this job for a long, long time. Because now there's an interest, there's a value on it. It's not a $50, well, I don't do that. I'm not going to do that. But now there's a salary. I have to put some more time in. I have to know about more committees. I have to get involved in more things that are going on here. It's more of a job, that you got to get involved. And I think we're going to find that there are going to be more younger people or more people want to get into this because it's changed. I think we talked about it in our last board meeting that I don't know how many years ago that they talked about adding a $75 or an extra $50 or raising it. That wasn't enough because it's coming up again. And at the end of this year, it might come up again, another 2 years, the same thing. We have to look at the future. We have to look at these kids coming up. We have to get more interest in politics. We have a lot of people here that have been here for a long time. And, there's differences coming. Change is good. So I think we got to look at this whole picture. Change isn't bad. We need to look at this. But the flip side, these committees put a lot of work in different things. And to sit here and pick and say they didn't do their job, You know, I'm not a college grad, I went 2 years. But I know we did a lot of work, and I know the people on it spent a lot of time from people that just been on there and people that have been there for a while. So I'm just saying, we put a lot into it and a lot of value and was a lot of information, so I have nothing to say. But thank you.
Great, thank you. And as someone who has their master's degree, this is good work. So I don't care what kind of college you have. Supervisor, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Are you okay if we go with?
Yeah, that's fine.
Supervisor Bender, and then we're gonna.
Sure.
Get you, Ron.
Supervisor Steve Bender, District 13. I just want to say we did put a lot of effort in that, and I would challenge you to go to a county website or a town website and try to find the wages for those people. I've looked for hours. I found out it gave me counties. I tried for the town of Vinland. I called the town of Vinland, but the town clerk wasn't there 2 or 3 times. And if you get a hold of the town of Oshkosh, I called them and they were going to get me the information. I never did get it. You know, so it wasn't due to a lot of effort. We basically put a lot of time. I don't know how long I spent calling, trying to get this information, and everything was documented by somebody on this county board.
But it was not documented, you.
It will be when it comes to the county board. You know, I just thought basically that, yeah, we should have put where we got our source from. The clerk got everything from all the counties. The information that's on your sheet from the counties came from the clerk's office. I truly believe the clerk's honest, and she didn't falsify any of the numbers on that. That's what we got. You know, and the reason why I would like to personally see a salary, I basically, on the average month, I go to 6 or 7 meetings. I never take more than 5. So usually I'm giving, like tonight, I won't get paid for this. I'm gonna be here for 3 hours and I'm not gonna get paid for it. But if I was getting a salary, at least I would figure, well, I'm getting something for my time. But I want to make sure that the next county board gets paid equal to like Outagamie County. They get like $5,800. And if the meeting's posted, mind you, you have to be on the committee and it has to be posted. Like when we went to UW Oshkosh Fox Cities for the grand opening, the ribbon cutting, Alon didn't get paid because it was not posted. They invited us there for the ribbon cutting, but that was just so we would be there to, you know, to shake hands and be a part of the ceremony. It's like when we went to the David Albright, we didn't get paid for that. We went to the Towns Association, we didn't get paid for that. I went to both of them because I think it's part of my job of being a good county supervisor, participating and being part of Winnebago County, representing so people can talk to me. And if they got questions, I'm there to answer them. And we put one heck of a lot of time in this. And anybody that can sit there and pick something apart, I mean, I could pick it apart. Believe me, I could find things in there that we could have done better, but we had like 3 months to do this. We met sometimes 3 times in a month. And Mary Ann Miller and the clerk, they were good enough to meet our schedule. So we could get this, so we could pass it, so the next county board could perhaps get a salary. And we didn't want a per diem tied to it because that basically frees up the clerk. She doesn't have to worry about the per diems. And you don't have to worry if you go to 6 or 10 meetings a month. You know, you're going to get your $6,000 a year. If you go to every meeting that's available, you know, you'll get the mileage for the meetings that are posted that you're on. You can claim mileage for that. When you go to a convention, there's no more $75. That's gone. You simply get $500 a month. That includes everything. So hopefully we can answer all your questions at the next one and works out good for everybody.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Deputy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick comment was, if, you know, we are all supervisors here and this is our job to get into the muckety muck. And so if somebody is not satisfied with the data that has been brought forth, then it is that supervisor's responsibility to provide any contradictory evidence and provide citations themselves. So I think I trust with the numbers and that have been brought towards us by from the task force. I think that this is a lot of work. I mean, just imagine going to like all the different cities and towns and getting that information. That is a lot of work. And I really, I mean, I do not think that they took these numbers and pulled it out of thin air. I trust their work. I trust what the task force has done. I don't think that there's been any implication of falsification. So, and like I said, if there is any falsification, then we're supervisors here. So do the supervisor job and do your homework yourself.
Thank you very much. The additional comment on the report. Anything from Zoom? Okay, so with that, I'm going to just move quickly to the resolution with the committee, please. Were there any thoughts on the draft resolution that was provided? What I don't want to do is do workshop the resolution right now, but I am looking for any comments pertaining to it. Or thoughts?
The draft resolution is pretty well worded, but I think that it would be best for us to entertain to at least get some answers in regards to the specifically the employee part of it before we go forward and vote. Which, from what I understand, we are going to find out about that in a month. And,
We are now.
The understanding was we were going to address it in August.
Correct. And now we're formalizing that. And you're saying, absolutely.
Yeah,
Looking
that's
forward
what
to
the answer, that's right. Now, I don't know if you're gonna like the answer, but you'll have an answer.
Hey, that's all I can ask for, right? Give me an answer.
And just to rec, so as you know, there's the resolution for this, but there's also the ordinance, because the code
Right.
is effective. So it essentially, it follows the rule.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This says how the supervisors are compensated. How are the citizen members of these committees, commissions, and boards compensated?
We discussed that. We discussed that in the meeting and we shut it off because that is not part of the resolution, was the citizen members. It was just the supervisors. So we shut that off. That could be determined by you. You folks could add a line in there, the citizen members are the same as, but we could not consider that.
Well, but the task force recommendation is for a straight salary for each of the 36 county board supervisors, irrespective of the number of committees or commissions and boards that they serve on, or as many meetings, steering committee meetings, state steering committee meetings they go to, or how many national NACO conventions they go to. $6,000 salary and no additional per diem compensation.
That was our recommendation.
Yeah, and actually, I'm looking at the draft resolution on line 52, it does say non-supervisors who are duly appointed to serve on committees, boards, commissions, who are not acting within the scope of their employment, doing so shall be eligible for a $50 payment for a half day, so it's basically the current per diem. So how this reads is, if it is a citizen member, they would get per diem. That's actually
That's
in there.
something you can put in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's, yeah, correct, that's what's in there for the draft. Okay. So, the one thing that's making me a little nervous on this is not having a person to shepherd this. Or meaning the draft resolution. So, I mean, we can just bring it back. But I feel like, is there anyone who wants to just bring it back, or does someone want to be the person to kind of shepherd this along?
I'll shepherd it.
Okay.
So, in this case, I'll need to make a motion to for the resolution to amend Winnebago County Rules Sections 20.0 and 5.5 to adopt a compensation package to pay Winnebago County providers a monthly salary.
Well, we can't vote on the resolution tonight. We can't vote on it tonight, it's not on the agenda. So what we can do,
I guess I misinterpreted what you said.
I'm so sorry, let me clarify. So what I'm saying is, when this is getting prepared for next meeting, I would like to have someone be responsible to work with Corporation Council, make sure that all this is.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well-
Say, if I just say, okay, Steve, yes, then, we don't know who's, I feel like we need a person,
Okay,
not a lead. Thank you. Does that make sense?
yes,
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
I'll still shepherd that.
Okay, all right. We'll do it that way.
Never mind. I rescind my motion.
Okay, like, okay, I don't think you can. 'Cause that's the thing. Okay. Were there any other comments on on this item before we put it to rest for tonight? Supervisor Blum,
As long as we can flush out the employee versus non-employee, and once that comes back here in August, that's the only concern that I have. Just so we don't run afoul of any statute or any other guideline that the IRS or anyone else. That's the only. Outside of it, I think it's very well done.
the Corporation Council has already said that whatever they come up with will be perfect.
There you go.
So. It's true. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, with that, I'm going to close item 12 on the agenda. Thank you very much again. Sincerely, appreciate it. We're going to open item 13. Report presentation, discussion, and draft resolution ad hoc committee structure review. This is going to be facilitated by Jacob Blum.
All right.
Supervisor Blum has a presentation that he's going to be logging into for both Zoom and in person.
Okay, so thank you, Chairman Stafford, and members of the committee. I want to thank you all also for the work that you have done on this task force as well. I know 4 of the 5 members of this committee also worked on this task force. And so with that, we are giving a kind of a visual copy of our final report, our conclusions. This was posted in the agenda packet. This physical document here, everybody should have it. So this is kind of basing it off that, but we're going to start with the introduction. So we were established in March, and what we've been looking for is to come up with a set of right-sized solutions that are specific and unique to Winnebago County. A lot of counties do a lot of different things. We were looking for something that would be uniquely for us. And so as per our charter, we're recommending to you today a solution that is flows logically and is uniquely tailored for us here at Winnebago County. So I think it's important to recognize the origins. This started from an older resolution written by Supervisors Astera and sponsored along with this committee, 3504/2022. It was passed in February of 2023 at the County Board Business Meeting, which effectively established this task force. And then moving into kind of what we've done for our work and our research. So we've met 5 times. We've sought opinions from Legislative Council in Madison, from the Wisconsin State Assembly via Mike Schrod's office. We've worked with Corporation Council extensively, and I want to thank Mary Ann for everything they've done, everything they're still doing. In addition, we've reviewed numerous documents and presentations from the Counties Association, the UW system, previous Winnebago County task forces on this topic, and we reached out to fellow supervisors and department heads in the form of a questionnaire. We also reached out to a handful of more people, which I would put up here. I think it's important to note that even though this was not a part of the task force, in September of last year, we had former Ozaki County Supervisor and WCA attorney Jacob Curtis present the County Board Committee organizational options last September. That was a very helpful presentation that the task force used during its deliberations in what we were going to come up with. We also had another member follow up with Ozaki County Administrator Jason McWinnell. Yes, Supervisor Deckerman reached out to him. Really appreciate that. And then we had to come present to our task force former Fond du Lac County Board Chairman and current Fond du Lac County Executive Sam Hoffman. We also some other people here, like I mentioned, legislative council and corporation council, and I also can't leave out my colleague who was instrumental in this assistance. Some other documents here that we used, that were provided by different members of the task force, the 1987 Arthur Young report, the 1990 Task Force on Efficiency and Effectiveness, the 01 County Exploration Committee, the 07 Personnel Function Committee, the April 2021 overview of Wisconsin County Committee Structures, and a snapshot of county committee structures under the UW system, a December 21 WCA presentation, and the February 2022 JPS meeting packet. And I'll get to why that's important in a second. The reason why we were using this JPS meeting packet was from an item that was prepared by Director Collard about different county structures and what Winnebago County has currently and how it compares to other counties. So that laid out a fair number of detailed data that we used in our deliberations. And I'm very happy that we had it. That was very, very lucky to have. I have a paper copy here for people who are interested. So going back, the questionnaires. So something else that we decided to do was to reach out to you and the department heads as well to form a questionnaire. And so we reached out to all 36 county supervisors and the major department heads in the form of a questionnaire that was done on SurveyMonkey. I know some people returned it just in paper. Some people did the electronic version. Nobody was required to sign their name to these, which we liked when we approved these questionnaires as a task force, because effectively it gave you the opportunity to speak candidly without, revealing who you are. I know a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this. And so we heard back from 20 supervisors and 20 department heads. And again, we got a lot of great data on the breadth and depth of experience that people have in their service in county government, their satisfaction with the committee structure, and any suggestions they would have if they were to design their own. So going back to our research, this was the overview, and then we have what we decided to come up with. And what we decided to come up with is a modification that brings us down to 9 major standing committees and boards of jurisdiction, down from the current 15. The 2022 JPS package says 16, but that doesn't include legislative. So what we're having now is going from 15 and 16 by this down to 9. So our current structure, I think it's important to remember, we have 15 of those. Now, on those, we have 70 supervisor member slots. Now, I just want to state something. This does not include the more minor commissions and boards, such as the ADRC, Board of Fox Library System, the Board of Adjustment. We didn't address those during this review. We do recommend that they are addressed at some point, but for the sake of simplicity, we just focus to the major departments and the major committees and boards of jurisdiction. So now we head over to citizen participation. Now, this is a bit wordy here, but essentially what we ran across when we were doing this research is what state statute has to say. And what statute has to say is that if we are doing any form of consolidation on that involves a board that has, or a committee that has citizen members that are statutorily mandated, we have to keep those. So for example, state law outlines that a doctor and a nurse, that a best effort should be made to have them on the Board of Health. So if we are doing a consolidation that involves the Board of Health, those citizen member slots need to be maintained. That also helps us for continuity of citizen membership, the expertise that they bring, and the help that they offer in, items like Human Services Board, the Board of Health, also land conservation as well. We'll get to that. But there's a caveat with that. Since citizen members would now sit on ostensibly more powerful committees and boards, the task force is recommending that a citizen member, an unelected member, cannot chair one of these new larger committees or boards of jurisdiction. This does not include solid waste. It does not include any of the other minor ones such as ADRC or the library system. Solid waste was not touched. There were some conversations about this, but what we came up with is that solid waste would just remain as is, and it would not be impacted because of the semi-autonomous status of the county government. And so we will get more into this. But essentially, let's take a look at the new structure. And I'm going to do something to kind of help visualize this for everybody. I have a membership key over here, which I think is important to look at. So you're going to see a lot of these dots in the upcoming slides that will visualize what we are proposing. The navy blue dots, those denote supervisor slots, and the orange ones denote citizen member slots. All right, and so looking at this, like we said, 9 major committees and boards of jurisdiction. The total number of supervisor member slots would go to 41, down from 70. This does not include legislative. Legislative is going to get a different sort of treatment that Supervisor Eisen brought up, which I actually think is a very good idea. And then a quick note of departments. There were some questions in some of our meetings of whether or not this would kind of affect departments' ability to hire other day-to-day operations. Not at all. This would only impact how a department would interface with the county board and with their respective committees. Right? And so we're going to start off with, okay, with the membership key here, we're going to start off with Public Works. So Public Works here, if you've been able to preview this document, you have probably seen this is a consolidation which consists of 2 standing committees. It's going to be highway, and facilities, and property management. 5 supervisors. The structure of it doesn't change. Right, so that is the Public Works Committee. Next, going to Judiciary and Public Safety. Okay, so this is kind of where we get into lateral transfers of departments. This is also an idea from Supervisor Eisen. So the committee's makeup, 5 supervisors, that's not going to change. It's going to stay as is. But we're going to suggest transferring 3 departments out of JPS's jurisdiction to other departments where we think it would be more appropriate. The county clerk is going to go to finance and administration. The Veterans Services Department is going to go to the Health and Human Services. As much as we like seeing Natalie, Jeff, and Julie here, they we don't really hear from them in terms of what their specific departments need very frequently. The most obvious point is budget time, but we do think that they would be better housed here, and they can always come to us if they need something in the future. Register of Deeds is going to go to planning and zoning. We thought that would be a more logical home for the Register of Deeds where Natalie is and the work that she does. 5 supervisors on that one as well. The next one is finance and administration. So this, several other counties do this. They have a finance and administration committee instead of a personnel and finance committee. This is kind of where Winnebago is an outlier. And so it'll be a consolidation of 2, personnel and finance and administration. The membership will be 5 supervisors. And just to kind of put a disclaimer out there, these changes will not take place until a midterm. The last thing we want to do is do chaos in terms of our budget. So these changes will not be implemented until the organizational meeting, should the board at that time choose to accept it, 2024, in April. And so the following departments will have their jurisdiction laterally transferred in: finance and administration. A quick little tidbit here: the microfilm department, which no longer exists, which was still mentioned in the rules apparently, is currently under the guise of the under the jurisdiction of the Personnel and Finance Administration, but that'll be written out because
We're a ditto machine.
right? So 5 supervisors again. The other thing I just want to mention quick, IS, or now IT, currently has a citizen member on it. That was not mandated by statute. That was put in there because of some prior circumstances at the IT department, which the county board thought it would be wise to have a former supervisor in IT, former supervisor, I think, possibly, I don't know if he's a but who has IT professional service. And so he currently serves on the IT committee. That is not state mandated. And so if IT is just going to be folded in with finance and administration, we are recommending standing that. So up next then, I know this is a lot, so I can slow down if people would like me to, is natural resources. The natural resources would be a consolidation of the following standing committees: BW Education, Extension, Agriculture, Parks and Rec, and Land Conservation. Now there is a caveat here. The caveat is that currently on the Land Conservation Committee, there is a USDA Farm Service representative that is mandated by statute. That was probably written in on page 4,985 of the Farm Bill 30 or 40 years ago, but that's what we have. So we're going to have 7 members, 5 of which will be supervisors. 1 of the citizen member slots is reserved for the USDA Farm Service rep, and 1 other citizen member. Another citizen member, I think, is a farmer. But the idea here is what we did is, again, this is something that we saw. We read through the statutes of what all three of these entailed, what they had as guidelines for membership. Statute can be a little bit vague, can give you a little bit of leeway. It kind of came down to an algebra problem for the human services or health and human services, which I'll get to in a minute. A board of health could have no more than 2/3 supervisors, and then a human services board could have no more than 1/3 of citizen members. So it was kind of doing that math and putting it together and finding a solution that works, that complies with all of these statutes. And so this is something we really did our homework on and we really stressed. This is what we asked legislative council about. This is what we asked corporate council about extensively. These are things that we really did hash out. And then moving to health and human services. So a consolidation of the following standing committees and boards, the Human Services Board, the Board of Health and Park. The following department will have the jurisdiction laterally transferred in, so from JPS to Health and Human Services and go Veteran Services. We think that's a more logical fit. Veteran Services is paired with Human Services operationally. We don't really, as much as we like Jeff, we don't hear from them all that much, so we figured that would be a better home. 9 members, 6 of which will be supervisors, 3 citizen members. The citizen members must fill the requirements by statute. And that is not so much a mandate, but an effort in good faith to find a doctor, a nurse, and I think, what else was it? Was it a doctor, a nurse, and there was really a nurse practitioner, but they would have to be compliant with what statute asks us to look for. And so those would be the slots there. Moving over to the next item, that's planning and zoning. That's going to remain unchanged because of the unique nature of planning and zoning and the business that they do, and how frequently they meet. And we decided to leave that alone. However, they're going to get the register of deeds laterally transferred in, and 5 supervisors will be the makeup. Moving on to aviation, that will remain unchanged, 5 supervisors there, and then going to solid waste. Again, that one does not change at all. 9 members, 5 of which will be supervisors and 4 citizen members. And then legislative. So this is kind of another item here. So legislative would no longer be a standing committee, instead it will be a special committee, which will consist of all the standing committee and major board chairs and the Winnebago County Board Chairman. So reflect this proposal, it would be 10 people down from the current board. And so we have a fairly large legislative committee because we have a fairly large committee and board structure, which makes that exists. So another item here, so the minor committees, commissions, and boards. We did not involve the more minor ones in our review. Things like the Winnebago Library System, Board of Adjustment, East Central Wisconsin Railroad Commission, the Industrial Board. We focused our work on the major ones, the big ones. But we recognize that these exist, there's a lot of them. And we were struggling to find a full complete list, and there's a lot. There's some listed in some spots, some listed in other spots. The existing county government, we're not looking at them now, but we do think somebody at some point somewhere should be looking at them. And compliance with statute. So I do have a couple notes about the resolutions themselves. Because this is a similar track to what the per diem task force was doing, this will require 2 pieces of legislation, 1 resolution and 1 ordinance change, because it's reflecting the rules as well. And so what we are asking for is JPS to consider and approve them at its August meeting. They are being drafted currently with Corporation Council, but they're not. I have to look over that a couple more times before August, so they are not quite finished yet. There's a couple of other outstanding questions, but we will have them done soon. And so those are the answers on that one. And then just to conclude, I'd like to thank everybody and every member of the task force for all of their work on this. We hope this is a good basis for the JPS, for Judiciary and Public Safety to act. This is a right size solution, in our opinion, for Winnebago County. This is, currently we have 15, or by this document, 16 standing major committee, standing committees and major boards. Just to kind of give you a review of the other counties. Waukesha has 7, Brown has 6, Richardson has 6, 8, Kenosha has 7, Washington has 6, Marathon has 7, Fond du Lac has 5, very aggressive. Wapaka has 15, and Calumet has 12. So Rock County also has 15. So you look at the counties that are fairly similarly sized to us. I know we get compared with Rock County a lot, but I think a better county to compare size by would be Racine. They currently have right here major standing committees and larger boards. So if you look at what Racine has, they have finance and human resources, governmental services, public works, parks and facilities, health and human development, economic development, land use and planning, and executive. Racine is an executive county. It's not an administrative county. They have the same model county government as we do. I know that we get compared to Ozaki often, but Ozaki is not, they are an administrator county, they are not executive. So that is that. Also, Brown County has 6, and they are also an executive county. They have an administration committee, public safety, planning, development, and transportation, human services, education and recreation, and the executive. So that is what we have so far. The resolutions we will have for you, Brian, at the August JPS meeting. The hope is that I would like to give this exact same presentation to the county board as a whole at the September special orders meeting. And then any deliberations with the county board decides to do from there would be what the county board decides to do. But I would like to thank everybody for their help and their inputs, and especially for the council's office. There will be more to be done on that front. I know that I emailed all of you, the whole board, via the clerk's office to come to today's meeting, to, intake this information and digest it. Feel free to ask me or any of the task force members any questions. I'd like to thank Mary Beth as well. She was a great member of the task force. And that's pretty much all I got.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes.
Dr. Flom. Again, I'm going to mimic what I said earlier with the other task force. And I'm the odd person out here, and that this is new to me. I'll get to you in a second. So I do appreciate all of the work that was put into this. This is obviously a lot of work has gone into this as well. And especially in the presentation, it helped me kind of navigate all of the bits and pieces. So thank you. And thank you to all of those who served on this task force as well. With that, I'm going to open it up for discussion first with the board. I'm sorry, with the committee. So any comments? Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have another handout.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For the size of our county board at 36 supervisors, there is sufficient manpower to service the 15 standing committees, commissions, and boards. To reduce the number of committees is to dilute the standing committees, commissions, and boards. To dilute the reduce the number of committees is dilute decision-making composition of the committee system, which in my opinion will reduce the efficiency of the county board's ultimate decision-making. Eliminating 30 committee memberships is unwarranted. Item 1, Highway Committee specialties servicing the Wisconsin state highways, unincorporated municipalities highways, as well as county trunk highways, is self-sufficient with 5 committee members. The facilities department has significantly, for a person who's watched this department evolve over the past decade, which unfortunately others have not had the privilege and the opportunity to experience. has significantly assumed maintenance and planned maintenance of county buildings. Their development and success over this past decade behooves the county board to keep their independence. Item 3, folding the information technology with the Personnel and Finance Committee orbit reduces the specialty decision-making necessary to plan and oversee an increasingly important aspect of county government. We're in the digital age. We need specialists. Item 4, natural resources. The UW extension is a multi-county department. Winnebago and Allegheny. Combining it with other committees detracts from the new department's operation. Lands conservation depends upon citizen input to carry out their mission of the Land and Water Department. To reduce its citizen involvement is to destroy the prime benefit of citizen input. I've had the privilege to serve on Land and Water, and I know some of the quasi-judicial questions that have arisen in terms of crop damage, and the sorts of issues that farmers have valuable input. Parks has strengthened its role with the county board, and it would be a shame to set it back for no good reason. Item 5. Human Services Board and Board of Health attract specialists in the social service and health service fields. They ought not to be combined. Nurses for public health, social workers for human services, and to fold Parkview Health Center into a health and human services conglomerate will ultimately lead to the sale of Parkview. Mark my words. In the world of priority budgeting, along a conglomerate human services model, Parkview will not survive. 270 employees. Now, my second document is an analysis of the survey data for the ad hoc structure review task force. The first survey was with county board supervisors. Supervisor survey analysis, 19 returns with 1 return unanswered, leaving 18 replies. 11 from supervisors over 2 years longevity, and 7 from supervisors with less than 2 years longevity. Of the 18, 5 were on 2 committees, 9 were on over 2 committees, 3 were on 1 committee, and there was 1 no answer. Of the 18, 3 felt that they were underworked, 13 worked just right, and 2 felt they were overworked. Of the 18 degree of satisfaction with committee participation, 10 were very satisfied, 4 were somewhat satisfied, 2 were neutral, and 1 somewhat dissatisfied. Of the 18, should your committee be combined with another? 4 strongly disagreed. 4 disagreed. 5 were neutral. 4 agreed. And 1 strongly agreed. For supervisors with over 2 years service, 6 no's and 5 neutral. For supervisors with less than 2 years services, 5 agreed and 2 no. Going on to department heads. 9 department heads with over 5 years of service and 11 department heads with less than 5 years of service. There were 2 committees with 2 less than monthly meetings, 2 with more than 1 monthly meeting, 16 with 1 monthly meeting. Staff members assisting in the preparing of committee meetings, 7 used over 2 members, staff members, and 13 used 2 or less members. Hours of preparation for committee meetings. 9 spent more than 8 hours, 10 less than 8 hours, and 1 no answer. For committee workload, 15 was appropriate, 3 overworked, 2 underworked. And the question, would combining committees save time and effort? The department heads, 5 strongly agreed, 8 somewhat agreed, 5 were neutral, and 2 disagreed. So I'd just like to share some of the statistics, some of the insights that the committee was able to tap in from the work that was done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you have questions,
Okay, thank you for your thoughts. Supervisor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that we've had a lot of different viewpoints from a lot of different counties, taking a look at Winnebago County. And one of the things that I often reference whenever I go to NACO conferences is when I tell them how many supervisors we have. And then they respond with, well, how do you get anything done? And we have a lot of committees, and oftentimes a lot of the stuff that we have gets kind of stuck into committees. And so you have to go through this one committee, and then it has to go through another committee until it finally reaches the county board. Now, granted, I mean, it's great in the sense that we are actually having productive conversations on that. And we do put a lot of we put a lot of importance onto the committees to answer these important questions, to actually focus on this stuff, which is good. At the same time, though, we need to streamline our operations. We always need to constantly examine how we do our operations. And I made a note in a previous task force meeting that I did actually have an in-person conversation with our previous board chair, Shiloh Ramos, and I mentioned to him about what we are looking at in regards to standing committees, and he was actually very, very much supportive of this, of what we are doing, because he is a person that is very familiar with local government. He's not just been a county board chair, he's been on Appleton City Council, he's been on Neenah City Council. He sees what happens there when you have a lot of committees and how oftentimes it just gets, things get stuck. And so he likes the fact that we are taking a look into what we can do to kind of grease the gears and make ourselves a more operable county board. So, and we've had the Fond du Lac County Executive take a look at our county, and he was like, I'm looking at this, and there's literally, we could reduce this down to 6 committees. There's no reason for us not to reduce it down to 6 committees, just, taking an outside look at it. And so we've had, this has been quite literally a couple of years in the making now, because we've had Jake Curtis from the WCA make a presentation for us, and kind of told us or showed us how Ozaukee County did it. Of course, they're an administrative committee or administrative county. And their population demographics are a little bit different, but at least started to get the gears turning in our heads on how to go by doing this. So I think that what we're looking at here is definitely needed. I find it to be definitely necessary. I think that will encourage us to focus on the actual core issues rather than spending a half hour debating about nuances, little tiny nuances, so that we can actually look at proper spending and proper budgets and proper accounting policy. So I think that I have full confidence in what the recommendations that we put forth here. I feel that we've done quite a bit of research and time, and we've looked at what other counties have done, like Supervisor Flom said. I think I also feel that Racine County would probably be a more comparable county for us. And they've got 6. So I think it's time for us to actually start making some changes in Winnebago County. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Hanson, do you have anything to add?
Thank you very much for the way you presented it. I am just going to echo Supervisor Deputy comment. Just a minute, my mouth shut. Calm down.
Okay. All right, I have a few comments. So this is, like I had mentioned, this was new to me, other than, the report that I received. Stepping back, right, so I don't need to go into my history, but I spent a lot of time in my career up to starting my own business in this kind of structural stuff. Actually, when I was at KC, I led the multi-billion-dollar marketing organization or strategy. So I know process well, and actually I learned process from, very big consultancy. And so when I first step back and I look at this, I look at the overall, does it hang together, and those key connection points. And I think this makes sense to me. I think I need to think about it some more, but like what you put together seems to flow in from a process channel point of view. And I like that. I think these are logical connector points. There are some that I probably would solicit feedback on the department level, just to make sure that we, as those who serve the public, are properly engaging with those within the administration from a governance point of view. That would be not a concern, but just more of a something I want to be more comfortable with. So from that point of view, I like what I see. I think there's a lot here that makes sense to me. And then I'm thinking about other comments I've heard as well. I'm looking through the document, which no one else really has other than the board, but I think there's some interesting thoughts here, though. I think about like item 3, and not to go through everything because we don't have that much time. The IT department, that meets once a quarter, right?
Yeah, if I may, I'm on that committee. We meet once a quarter and we have about 1 or 2 agenda items each. I would guess if there's one committee that you folded in right off the bat, it would be that one. I'm not saying that the work that the committee does isn't valuable. I just think it's not broad enough in its or deep enough in its perspective to do that. We have a good IT department, and the committee doesn't have to stick its nose in things, frankly, because it's very self-sufficient. So I mean, yes, if we live in a digital age, it doesn't mean that we still need to have standalone IT department or IT committee.
Right, and so that's kind of my point with that. As I'm thinking about this and looking through all of this, I'm asking myself, what value can we bring? Because that's really what we should be asking. In any continuous improvement, we need to be asking, what value are we bringing? And what efficiency can we provide? And those are, I don't care if this is government or business or nonprofit, those are basic questions. And that's one where I'm familiar with that because I've actually listened into a few, and I think that one probably does make sense to me more than anything else. And I'm curious, in terms of Parkview, boy, oh boy, I'm drawing a blank, but Outagamies nursing home is called Brewster Village. Do we know how Brewster Village is handled within Outagamie? I'm just curious.
If you look at the Outagamie board structure and their committees, here's what they currently have. They have finance, legislative, audit and human resources, public safety, highway, recycling and solid waste, property, airport, recreation, economic, and they have a health and human services.
Okay, so they handle that in the way that we would be presenting here.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the other thing that to look at, citizen membership, we still have is fairly strong. The continuity of service that citizens provide is extremely important. I mean, that's one of the chief reasons why we left solid waste out actually, because of that. And the same deal here. I mean, if you look at health and human services, you still have those 3 citizen members, which one of them ideally should be a doctor or nurse. And if you're thinking health and human services, you think of those things, right? And, you know, possibly somebody else who would be maybe a former social worker or another professional in that regard. And I do want to address the notion that this would be the first step of the sale of Parkview. It's patently reading the website. The committee or the task force never mentioned that, and that was not something we ever brought up. That's not a goal. That's not something that we ever attempted or even discussed. That's not something that was set out in our charter. It's a baseless and off the wall accusation. And so that is not something that was attempted here at all.
Okay, yeah, and that's somewhat of my concern. That's why I asked about Brewster Village. I have personal experience with Brewster Village. And it is a fantastic facility, just like Parkview is. And they have great level of care. So I can assume that there'd be a continuity if Winnebago followed the same suit. As long as we, as a board, ultimately decide that's what we want to do, and I sure hope it is. And I sure hope that's something that we want to continue, though. I would say that's probably out of the scope of what we're talking about here. And I would just caution with that language, because critically thinking, I mean, that's a fallacy, probably appeal to probability that we want to be careful with. Without having some substantiation to make that claim, I think will cause a lot of issues. So I think we should be careful about that. And then in terms of the stats, and these are good and all, I'm a stat guy. The sample size, anyone who's a stat guy, if we're going to say stat person, if we have a sample of 18, this is all anecdotal. This is not statistically significant. There's no way, even with the universe that we have. So it's interesting. I also don't know if these the cuts I'm seeing here make sense to me, but that's just me. So those are my comments. With that, I'm going to open up to.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see. Please.
Thank you. Jake? Please articulate a need or a reason to change the structure of committees.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you look at this from a regular perspective, right? And what I may answer may not satisfy Paul's demands, but I will kind of appeal to the broader audience at large. Regular review is important. The city of Oshkosh regularly reviews its committee, commission, and board structure, right? This county, we have been discussing this for decades now. And I think it's important that just because we have a system in place now doesn't mean we can't improve upon what we have. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we have very strong citizen representation and very strong input from the public. This doesn't change that. If a farmer has an issue with the Land Conservation Committee and wants to use his or her expertise, there's a slot on that committee for that. That will still exist. That's not going anywhere. What we're doing is we're still providing the same level of services that a committee or board would preside over without touching day-to-day operations, except of how they interact with the board. You know, it is something where if we have the opportunity to streamline a little bit, there could have been a more aggressive proposal put out there. But if we have the opportunity to streamline, why wouldn't we take it? Why wouldn't we take it?
Why wouldn't we downsize the county board? And that's how all these other counties got to have 6 and 7 and 8 committees, because they downsized from 35, 36 to 20 to 18, into
As I
25.
recall, the board took up that measure in 2021.
I want to share with you a historical perspective. And if you go back to Racine County, go back to Waukesha County, go back to Ozaukee County. The reason they downsized their committees is because they downsized the board. The University of Wisconsin Extension gave two reasons for downsizing your committees. The first reason is if you downsize the board and you have to adjust your supervisor population to committees. And the second is if the county board feels that any particular committee is exercising excessive power in the sense that they are co-opting decision-making that ought to be done by the board itself, they would take action there. In our case, in February of 2022, prior to the election of the new crop of county board supervisors, the finance director came to the Judiciary Committee and presented a request to downsize, because how are we going to accommodate all these new supervisors on all these committees? Well, our experience has been that I gave you the statistics of how many supervisors that answered the questions are on various committees. There are two on more. There are whatever that happens to have been. I find it very difficult because I do not believe that the task force has articulated a substantial reason to downsize, other than it was asked to downsize through a resolution that was introduced by a supervisor who was prodded by the administration to do that. And the documents that were used to substantiate establishing an ad hoc committee are the identical documents that were submitted February of 2022.
So just a couple comments, and then I know that we have someone who wants to speak as well. There are actually quite a few supervisors in this room who are part of that conversation about downsizing, including myself. And as I recall, one of the biggest reasons why we were looking at that is because we had a lot of vacancies that we couldn't fill. And there was concern that we needed to shrink the size of the board to be able to have a fully functioning board. So I think we need to also make sure that we understand what was driving, in part, the other characteristics of why we were looking at that in the first place. And the other is that, as you recall, we invited a WCA representative, Jay Curtis, here, who is part of Otolis Law, who is our go-to law firm, I would say, right? In all matters that are policy and best practice. And that question was asked because I asked that question, because I think it's a fair question to ask in terms of, can someone and should someone downsize, or we'll say right size, however you want to say it, the board in order to, or to enable restructuring of committees? Do you need to have them happen at the same time, or can you do those separately or in isolation? And his answer is absolutely. You don't need one to have the other. And I believe that he used Ozaki as an example in his response. So for me, that is a very fair question to ask, and one that I was struggling with originally. They're like, okay, wait a minute, do we have to do both? And I was satisfied with that answer, that no, you don't. And honestly, I think every so often we should revisit, do we have the right amount of supervisors? Now, that's not what we have to look at today, or this year. But I do think that is a very fair thing to ask throughout, periodically. So,
And if I may,
yes,
we didn't say that we should never revisit the number of supervisors. Just number one, that was out of scope jurisdiction of this task force, and number
Right.
two, perhaps we should at least wait for the 5-year census estimate. to go forward.
that makes sense. Okay, supervisor.
So I'm the odd man out on this committee. And I really am not the odd man out. But I got 4 judiciary members and myself. So I came into this going, what's wrong with the committees? We get the job done. But I had some committees in mind that perhaps shouldn't be anymore, just because that's the way I was thinking. And one was information technology, which I go, well, we have that department and they seem to do a good job. And the committee doesn't meet that often. So that was gonna be my caveat to offer that as a push. We all had different opinions, I will say, but we all listened to each other. And we went back and forth on what should be combined and what shouldn't be combined. Our task, as I saw it, was to look at the 12 standing committees, and then we had 3 boards and commissions, health, human services, and waste management. And I didn't think that was to be involved in this, just the standing committees and legislation, how it's set up as the chairman of every department gets to go. Okay. And human services. So I thought, well, you got to give and take here. And that committee, Judiciary, had already had the study and had kind of made up their mind that this was going to take place. So I got a lot of homework to do. So I read all those studies. And I listened to Sam from County Executive from Fond du Lac. He had some good points, but he said, just remember, Fond du Lac is not Winnebago County, and keep that in mind. And he made mention of that on a couple of the committees that I was pretty sure I wanted to keep as separate committees. Planning and zoning, it's different. It's just a different committee, and that's why we left it by itself. They view, they have public hearing, they have deliberative. There are 3 meetings a month, and then they throw in a regular planning and zoning meeting. It didn't work that all those committee members that maybe don't want to meet that much would do that work, so we left that alone. I think we came up with the best that we could. Is it perfect? Nothing's ever perfect. And if you have any suggestions and have good reasons why you don't like something we did, then present that. But we didn't come up with this at the first meeting. It took us many meetings and many discussions. And yes, we had the surveys, which I don't want to discuss the surveys because we are not discussing those because of a statutory thing. So do I like everything? No. Do I like everything of the county board? No. But we have downsized to 9. That's a step. And some fit slots really easy and some don't at all. And yes, we will have 5 committee members on one committee and 5 on another, and they're going to be combined. So there's only going to be 5 people. So some people might be angry about that. I understand that, but we're trying to consolidate and then not lose the connection that those committees have with the department heads, committees, and then to the board. We don't want a straight line from a department head to the county board, from the executive to the county board. We want to have that flow. So there's still people have their say, the department heads can speak up, the committees can make their decisions and pass it along to the board. So perhaps the board doesn't have to sit there for hours and hours regurgitating what the committee came up with and would respect what the committee had decided. there can be discussion, but we don't have to tear it all apart and revisit it. So I hope you understand how I sat here, because I go, I'm gonna have a hard time convincing anybody of anything on this ad hoc task force. I don't know about anybody else, but I didn't take any pay for this because that's not what I'm about. So I had no kick in the game here. And Jacob did a great job of putting together that slide. Brian brought document after document, shared with us, so that I think they all had most of that. I didn't. So I looked at each county, but again, you have to look at the perspective of the county and its population, and not the number, but the demographics of the population. And I always say Winnebago County isn't like every other county. So I think by getting down to 9, we did a fair job of a start. And it was never about the size of the county board, the pay, or anything. It was about, let's see if we can group these committees together. And like I said, is it perfect? No. Does it need tweaking at this time? I think what we've presented here is good. And I think that if you don't like something, talk to us. You could have come to our meetings and told us what you didn't or did like. So now you have it in black and white. You had the presentation. If you don't like something, let us know, but have a reason why you don't like it. I am a firm believer, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I did see some links in the chain that were not possibly correct. So that's how I approach this. And I know that Brian and I don't always agree on things, but we come to an agreement. We respect each other when we look at this as a whole. What's good for the county, not what's good for me, what's good for you. How does this look when we present it? So I appreciate you just giving it a real good look before you make your decision when that decision comes to be.
So if I may ask one quick question, and then we'll get to you, Supervisor Powers. It is a rather pointed question. Do you feel good about this?
Do I feel good?
Do you feel good about it?
I'll say good, not great. Good.
Okay. But it's good. I mean, this is a change.
It's a
It
change.
could be an iterative change, from what I understand. Okay. All right, thank you. Supervisor Powers.
I have a question about the Health and Human Services, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question about the Health and Human Services proposal. Board of Health has to have a doctor and a nurse, you said.
Yes.
And that was the third part. Board of Human Services has to have a citizen member who is a consumer or who has a family member who's a consumer.
That's correct.
What does Parkview need?
They don't need anything. They just have 5 supervisors, as I currently understand.
Okay.
Yes. So that third slot would then be, because that was the one I was thinking, somebody who is a consumer or consumer adjacent to human services.
Okay.
Supervisor Grant, and then I saw, yes, we'll get to you after Supervisor Grant. And then, yeah.
I'm just wondering, when I go to the committees that I'm on, generally speaking, we're there for 2 hours. How do you end up with 3 committees combined, not working for 6 hours because each individual department is sitting there with their own specific needs?
So one of the things that we decided to do was the way that the committees eventually will run themselves, it's gonna be up to them. Right? Committees and boards will run themselves geared to how they see it best. This committee runs one way, DNF runs a different way, Human Services runs a different way. We are giving structure, we're not telling them how to do business. So if they want to meet more frequently and have shorter meetings, they can do that. If they want to have department heads email reports, instead of taking up meeting time giving a report, if they don't have a deliverable that they need to give to that committee report, they can do that. We're not gonna tell, the Health and Human Services, and there's a question about whether or not we would call the committee or board, or, the Public Works Committee, how we're not gonna tell them, hey, you have to meet once a month, or you have to meet twice a month, you have to have a 6-hour meeting, you have to have a 2-hour meeting. The way you feel like you want to run your committee, that's up to you. That's between the chair and the membership.
So when you join all these committees together, you can end up with Human Services having their own meeting, and the Health Department having their own meeting, and Parkview having their own meeting. Is that what I'm hearing you
If they
say?
want to structure it that way and say, hey, we're gonna have a meeting and this is what we're gonna talk about Parkview during this meeting, yeah, they can do that. It's allowed in the rules. So again, if Brian wanted JPS to meet once a week, and if the committee agreed with them, then yeah, we could do that. But the way that they want to run their meetings will be up to them.
And just, if I may, for like JPS as an example, I reach out to all the department heads and I say, hey, Mary Ann, I'd love for you to come to JPS at this time and talk about what's going on, what you're doing. The same thing for county's clerk. I think it's important as a committee that you engage these different groups, because honestly, JPS is one of those unique situations where we do have all of these different people reporting through us, if you will, including emergency management, which used to have their own meeting and now has been folded in. So I think that's the importance of a chair. And one that actually, a comment that I'll be making at some point down the road is, I think that we need to give maybe a little more structure to the chairs as well. Because you go in as a chair and it really is molded to the person and not the process, which is not ideal.
So are you talking about a job description?
We'll call it a job description, but I don't want to say that. Well, but the idea is similar. I would say more of a scope of work, if I were to give it a title, but I think that it's important for consistency's sake.
And Jacob, you did speak about the rules that are gonna have to be created. Okay, so that was another one. And I know that we had, and Chuck, help me out here.
I certainly will. I'm next, so.
Oh, well, then I'm gonna let you speak to that.
Okay. Do you have anything else then?
I'm done now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I review the document, I won't comment on other departments and consolidation, but I will on page 2, specifically item, I believe it was 4, natural resources. Being a member of Land Conservation Committee for 20+ years, you are putting 3 departments together under the supervision, if I use that word, of 5 supervisors. None of these are compatible. Land conservation is under Chapter 92, and it has very unique, different responsibilities than those other 2 departments. I was brought up in our committee meetings last Thursday by Supervisor Nelson, and I think he's correct. Actually, what we do on land conservation might conflict with what they do with parks. They're all about expanding the resources. We're about conserving the resources. So, and I was on Unity Extension, I believe, for 2 terms. They deal mostly with support for state mandated benefits to the public. It could be the food stamp thing, yeah, SNAP is one of them, et cetera, et cetera. So to have a single 5-member committee with the 2 citizen members who probably wouldn't even show up for the other 2 departments. It's just not compatible. I mean, let me give you an example, and because I have Chapter 92 on my phone here. And I want to quote this for you, and it's something for you to think about, because this is a lot of responsibility.
Here we are. Land Conservation Committee powers, 92.07. Para 14. Let me get to that. I want to quote it correctly. Enter upon lands. If you're a member of the Land Conservation Committee, you have the authority under state law to enter any land within this county for a conservation purpose without violating state law. You're not trespassing. So now that is rarely used. There's some farmer issues that have come up where we might have to do that. But I hope I demonstrate to you that the Land Conservation Committee, just like planning and zoning, perhaps aviation, I'm not real familiar with that, really needs to be a standalone committee. I mean, our responsibilities are far too broad to have 5 different supervisors who really aren't trained and understand what our responsibilities are. If you went, and could they be compatible? I don't know how you would be with parks. I mean, that's a whole different thing. Extension, we have to have 2 of our members on extension. So that is a bit of a link there. But that's all there is. I mean, I really think that needs to be separate. And did I answer your question? What was it again?
No, you did a much better job than I would have done, but that was what I was going to talk about, yes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that and thank you. Yeah, I hope there's a lot of sentiment for making that change.
Thank you very much. Supervisor, you both had your hand
No,
up.
I was pointing.
Oh, Supervisor Fincher.
I just echo what Chuck was saying. I was on Land and Water and I'm on the parks and I'm on the UW extension. Land and Water doesn't belong with either one of those 2. I mean, they're a separate entity. And even if you put parks and extension together, I mean, we had a big thing with the daycare. I don't know how many people, how many emails I answered, how many people, including yourself, that I contacted about the daycare. You know, and before that, we had an issue with the Grumman Boat Landing because we were going to do the 2nd phase of the Expo Center. We had probably 20 citizens that talked to the committee because the Parks Department was not going to change. So they came to the committee and the committee basically changed it so that we went to the Grumman Boat Landing and now we're going to do the Expo Center next year. But, you know, you answer an awful lot of emails and when you only divide that up, right now there's 10 people to take that responsibility. We're going to have 5 people to take that responsibility. And it's easy if you don't respond, you know, and a lot of supervisors don't. You know, it's real easy. You get an email and hit delete. Well, that's not the way I am. If you email, I'm going to answer you. And I'm going to try my best. If you need daycare, you have kids, and they were going to close that at the end of June. Anybody that I could email, anybody I could get that had any amount of authority that could help, I was emailing them because I wanted that daycare to stay open, and it is. The YMCA took it over, and the daycare is succeeding. But I think if we put ourselves too thin, what's going to happen is you're not going to have the drive to do that. You're going to say, I'm overloaded. I can't do it. Either you're going to run for one term and drop out, or you're just not going to do it at all. You're going to basically start hitting delete more often. So I think you have to be wise on how we combine the committees and make sure you don't overload the people that you put on them. I mean, if you have a committee that doesn't really get many emails, well, sure, it's easy. But if you have controversial, like when the dogs wanted to go in Menominee Park, we had 1,800 people sign a petition to let dogs in County Park. Well, can you imagine how many calls I got? You know, and Rob Way said dogs are never coming in that park. But the dogs are in the park, aren't they? So I think you have to take all that in consideration. And if you want a good county board and a good mix, make sure you don't overwork your supervisors because either they won't do the job done or they won't stay.
Supervisor.
Thank you. And you brought something to mind that I really need to mention. Land and Water deals a lot with farmers. Now, our farming community, which I'm very well of, being a retired chairman from Billund, the farmers are pretty outspoken and quite direct. So if you have an issue that would be of concern to farmers or would do something that they're not really pleased with, I suggest this committee, pardon my French here, damn well better understand what farming is about. Because you're gonna be really challenged. And these guys don't mess around. They're not polite. They follow their own doctrine and they say what needs to be said. So once again, consider all this.
Like I say, we don't want to shortchange that either. I mean, farmers are the backbone of who we are as a nation.
Yes, they are.
We are as a county, and we need to actively work to help our farming community.
I think about 80% of the lands within this county is in farming. Town of Benton was 83%.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions from those here in person?
I just want to say thank you for this presentation. It was wonderful and I love your slideshow and I may have to call you for that. So, but I just want to say thank you. You guys did an amazing job to everyone who had their fingers into this and just thank you.
No, I don't know. Is there anyone on Zoom who wants to make a comment? We good? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I don't want this to get long. But it's very advantageous. We have Dr. Copel here. And I am just curious that, like, really curious. In terms of your area, do you have concerns with this direction?
Short answer, no. I came from a county that had a combined health and human services department. There are ways to shorten meetings so that they don't have to go 6 hours. In the county I came from, our health and human services meetings were at most 2 hours long. And I don't think that the committees being combined that way lose. I do understand that when you have multiple committees and you have multiple board members, now you have to consolidate to one, that some people are not going to be on that board. And I can certainly empathize that I understand that. But in terms of how this consolidation would really affect me as a department head, I'm still here, you would be affected too. It basically, we can make it work. So that's, in a nutshell, it doesn't concern me if you do. And if you decide as a group that you want to leave it alone, we're good with that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, with that, we are going to close item 13 on the agenda. Oh, you know what? Before we close it, I'd be more than happy to. Director Kearney, do you have any thoughts on this direction?
It's not an uncommon people, elsewhere. I think for Health and Human Services, work together. Not exactly sure how that would work with adding Parkview and veterans all to that into one committee. I think one of the things that works well now is we do have more time to educate the board members than we will have in a committee. But that's something to be taken into consideration, and I'm sure that committee can make space for that in a way that works best for them. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback as well. Okay, with that, we are going to close item 13 on the agenda. And now we're at item number 14, which is the next meeting date, which is Monday, August 7th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Again, I asked for agenda items, not the finished items, but the agenda item by Monday okay, that says June. I know that's not right. That would be July 24th. We're just going to make that little change there. Okay, July 24th. And again, we don't need finalized items, but I do need to know that you want to be on the agenda so we can work with Corporation Counsel and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. So when we meet, we're productive. So if we can do that, that'd be fantastic. With that, that closes item 14. Item 15 adjourned. Anyone who make a motion?
Motion.
Okay. Any discussion with that? I don't think so. No. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries adjourned.